You saw the video title. Do I really need to say the intro? As for the seizure warning I usually like to give, there weren't any major sequences I saw in Spider-Man Brand New Day that gave me concern regarding seizure risk. Again, not a doctor, not an expert by any means, but there weren't any sequences that featured any quick cutting. There are some moments that involve some visual effects stuff that might be a bit weird, but this film should be considered relatively safe, with the caveat that those of you who actually live with photosensitive epilepsy use your best judgment, but that's at least the opinion of a rando just trying to do good. Now, another little bit of housekeeping before I begin. Those of you who are longtime viewers of my YouTube channel, if any of you are still around, know that way back when, around the time of Civil War, I enacted a bit of an embargo of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, in the time since, when I stopped trying to make being a film critic a full-time career, I've relaxed on that embargo a little bit, mostly to post some rants and discussions. But in this case, with Spider-Man Brand New Day specifically, it feels like there's actually a discussion to be had about the film that isn't just adding to the pointless cycle of hype. There's actually a discussion here to be had when it comes to the film as a film. And if I had to really summarize my thoughts in a sentence, I would say that Spider-Man Brand New Day is good in spite of the MCU, not necessarily because of the MCU. Because it actually kind of surprised me that for the first time in a long while, this film, yes, it was an MCU film, but it actually had its own unique identity. It actually felt like a Spider-Man movie and not episode 357 of the Avengers show, which is something that kind of agitated me about a lot of the past MCU stuff, which is why I didn't really bother reviewing any other ones leading up to Endgame. And so here, there's a certain... It's really hard to not go into spoilers, but when it comes to the overall story that is told here, it's also, for the first time in a while, a story that actually feels like it's lifted out of the comics rather than simply paying lip service to the comics. That was another problem I've had with the MCU as a whole, where it would include iconic moments from a character's history in the films, but it wouldn't really feel like a part of the film. It just felt like it's included because they know fans are expecting it to be included. Whereas here, it felt like I was actually watching an adaptation of a modern Spider-Man comic. Like, the storyline that's being told here would have been right at home in the pages of Spider-Man comics of the early 2000s, and even some of the modern run that we've been getting. And so that's another thing that I was legitimately surprised by. But a third thing that I was also surprised by is that this film actually trusts its audience to have faith in this and has faith in the story that it's telling. It doesn't try to explain everything. It doesn't try to point you in every single direction. It basically lets parts of the story actually breathe, which was also incredibly surprising and something I found myself really liking. Even right down to the way the film was shot and the way characters were staged in the frame, there was actual thought to the image composition. It wasn't just, oh, we're just being very utilitarian and just pointing the camera where it needs to be to tell the story. It's like, no, they actually put thought into where the characters are in the frame and how to use, the visuals to reinforce the story. How about that? Now, again, it's really hard for me to discuss this film without spoiling it, but in terms of overall style and overall presentation, it was a really refreshing experience because it found a way to weave in the trappings of the MCU, but in a way that didn't feel forced, that didn't feel like an unnecessary callback. It worked things in a way that actually felt organic, and it even paid a little bit of lip service to just how ridiculous some of the interconnectedness was. Yeah, there are some moments that if you had seen some of the other films in the MCU as of late, you'll appreciate, but it actually follows the formula of, hey, we're only going to give you enough that you need to know to follow the story that is in front of your eyeballs. It's not expecting you to do homework. It's not expecting you to have followed every single film that has come out. It basically is like, okay, here's the background. You good? All right, we're moving on. And I especially like how the film has a decent bit of a time skip between the events of No Way Home and now, where it kind of establishes, hey, here's kind of the new status quo for Spider-Man following where we left him last. And honestly, like, Having that prior knowledge of the other films helps, but I can also easily see someone who maybe hasn't seen the previous Tom Holland outings of Spider-Man. I can see this being a good jumping on point for them because, again, it gives you enough detail that you're not lost. It basically kind of establishes, hey, here's some info here that you need, and you're good. And so, yeah, there was actual thought to the cinematography and shot composition. It didn't feel like it had to crowbar or force any of the usual tropes of the MCU in. And even shocking of all, its post-credit thing was actually subtle and tasteful. It wasn't one of those over-the-top, oh, here's like the moment that's going to be memed and talked about on social media. It's just like, okay, here's a little bit of something, but it's not something that is a glorified trailer for the next glorified trailer. It actually knew what kind of story it wanted to tell. It made sure that it felt like a Spider-Man story and not, an Avengers story with Spider-Man in it. And so, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I actually surprisingly enjoyed myself while watching Spider-Man Brand New Day. Yeah, I went in with some low expectations because the previous outings of the MCU had disappointed me for very different reasons. But yeah, I actually enjoyed it, and I'm sure I don't really need to say, oh, I recommend it or I don't recommend it, because anyone who is interested in seeing this film will see this film regardless, especially if they're like me and had the coupon through T-Mobile, which is honestly probably why a lot of people went to see this film, because again, $5 ticket. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Spider-Man Brand New Day. I was legitimately surprised that how much I enjoyed it, and it felt refreshing in how unlike the rest of the MCU it was, except not in a way that was being tongue-in-cheek like Deadpool and Wolverine, but in a way that felt true to the character of Spider-Man. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. So now if you excuse me, I've been in a movie theater for 3 hours and I am very, very tired. So I'll see you all next time when I next decide to review a movie.